Hi, and welcome to the Modern SharePoint and Microsoft Teams webinar presented by Valto. I am your host, Dougie Wood. I am an Office 365 consultant, and I'm working from Valto. We are cloud specialists in Office 365, SharePoint and Azure. And we focus on delivering digital transformation through cloud technologies and general modern working. So I'm just going to flick through now to the agenda for our webinar. So we're going to be looking at modern SharePoint and what new features are available inside of SharePoint Online. We're going to be looking at Flow, which is an automation tool within Office 365, and PowerApps for modern mobile applications and user interfaces for replacing paper forms. And we're also going to be looking at Microsoft Teams and the functionality that's available within there. We're then going to have a Q&A. So we've got some frequent asked questions, as well as we'll be taking questions from the audience. You can post any questions as we go through the webinar. You can post that via Teams, which we're currently presenting this webinar through. So there's a Teams chat box at the bottom corner, and any questions as we go through, feel free to post them there. And then at the end of the session, we'll take a look at those and answer as many as we can do. Okay, so the first bit we're going to look at is modern SharePoint. So I'm just going to close this down. So modern SharePoint, what we refer to as modern SharePoint, is the new user experience which Microsoft have delivered to replace the old clunky SharePoint user interface. When you kind of mention SharePoint to people, quite often they have these visions of very sort of ugly, clunky looking systems. So Microsoft have put together what they refer to as the modern user experience, which is designed to look a little bit more sleek, a little bit more user friendly, easier to update, and it's predominantly focusing a lot more with sort of imagery rather than sort of static text. So this is a typical modern homepage. This is what we refer to as a hub site. The main purposes of a hub site is to act as your homepage or your intranet page to provide communication as well as links to certain areas of the intranet or third-party websites and applications. So on our homepage, it's very typical to see things like this, which is the hero web part, which contains multiple links to useful resources from within our intranet, as well as company news, so news articles which are getting rolled up. And again, these could be rolled up from multiple places from throughout our intranet. We've got a weather web part on the right-hand side, as well as a company Twitter. So we can pull in and embed things like Twitter web parts or other feeds from social media platforms. On the left-hand side, we can also see the activity. So as long as we've got access to the documents that it's presenting here, it's going to show us all the sort of activity that's been working on around the site. So documents which my colleagues and myself have been working on will appear inside the activity stream. As well as we can also plug into departmental sites, which are part of the Teams environment that I'll be demonstrating later on in this session. So what is SharePoint? SharePoint is an internal to Office 365, so it means all of your data is securely stored, as well as SharePoint has two main functions. One is the document management functionality, which we'll be looking through, as well as the communication functionalities. So things like the news feeds that we looked at before. And with the new modern way of working, the news feeds are really simple, really easy to update. So if I wanted to add a new item into this news list, I can just click on the add button, click news post, and then we can simply give our news article a name or a title. We can select a background image by clicking the change image button, clicking upload. selecting a picture from somewhere, clicking Add Image. We then set our focal point, so where do we want it to sit on the page, and then we can scroll down a little bit and we can add content to our article. So there are multiple things that we can plug into this, and we're not going to have enough time to run through all of them, but the featured web parts which we can plug into this are the most frequently used. So things like text, images, embedding files or links to external resources, embedding things like Twitter web parts and things like that. Highlighted content is the activity feed. So again, showing highlighted content, pulling out useful bits of information from the intranet. But let's just say we want a little bit of text in our article a few times. We can add images and we can add other things into here as well. But then once we click on publish, it's going to publish our article and take us back to the home page, and then we'll see our latest article appear here with the thumbnail that we selected from our banner image. And it's also telling us which site it's come from. So the purpose of a hub site, which is the site we're currently looking at, is this is the master site, the home page to your overall intranet. All other aspects or intranet will then plug to this hub site. So all your sort of departmental areas, team areas, project areas, they will all plug into this so that it provides a consistent look and feel. So they will automatically inherit the look and feel from your hub site. As well as it also provide, the hub site will then roll up anything like the news or the activity documents being worked on and provide a dynamic homepage with content which is constantly changing based on what has been worked on in these other departmental areas. So this is one type of hub site style. We've also set up another style here, style 2, and this is what we can see with, it's slightly different with a banner image at the top. Some news and plugins, but it's essentially the same kind of functionality. It's just laid out slightly differently. So just going back to our home site. We've then got another type of modern SharePoint site, which is referred to as a communication site. Now, a communication site is for predominantly just conveying information. It's usually areas which 99% of your organization would have read access to, whereas only sort of a couple of users will have administration access to this. An example that we've set up for this is a product information site, almost like a product catalog or something like that, where you're wanting to display all of the different products that you have available, giving your employees access to product materials, maybe sales materials related to those products, and generally giving updates about when new products are being released. So on this kind of page, we're showing different articles in a sort of stacked way. Maybe the new products which you're wanting to show to your employees, and providing navigation to certain areas like supplier products lists, as well as providing materials such as like images in an image gallery to show all the different products that you have available, and you can skip through and see all the different products in there. So the idea behind a product site, the idea behind a communication site is to give information rather than having collaboration or departmental areas working together. It's just for having a static area where people can go and consume information. It's resources for all of your staff. The next area is the next modern site is what we refer to as a team site. And this is the difference between a communication site and a team site, is that a team site is for giving, for example, this is the finance site, and the finance organization, the finance department may be responsible for creating certain policies or procedures related to sort of finance, maybe they create forms such as expenses claims and things like that. And this particular site is then providing a platform for the finance department to issue things like forms and templates that people can come and collect. And it's there's then a secondary area, which is for the actual teams, which we'll come on to look at. So the financial team would have an area where they can store their own internal files. So there's two sections to the document storage for a department such as finance. The first area is a modern team site, which is responsible for giving a platform for everyone in the organisation to come in and consume documents such as templates and forms. And the second area is sheerly just for the departments such as finance to collaborate internally inside their own department and work on documents which are just for the finance department's eyes only. Essentially, though, the home page can be exactly the same as a hub site, where we can have news, we can have links, quick links, documents, and general activity that's going on for the finance team. Just going back to the hub site, SharePoint sites are known for their advanced document management functionalities. So I quickly just wanted to give you an example of how the document management works inside SharePoint. Every SharePoint site has at least one document library, which is what we're looking at the moment, and it's always called documents. You can have multiple document libraries, but quite often it's usually one document library per site. This is where all documents are stored, and they're displayed in here. We can upload and download documents and edit documents directly inside the web browser, or we can prompt to open them in their native application. So, for example, open them in Word or Excel directly from here onto your computer. We've also added some additional tags in here. So we can tag things like review dates, approval dates, who the reviewer approver is, and then we can do things with automation with Flow, which we'll come on to looking at shortly, which will do things like look at the review date and then maybe send an email to whoever is the approver to say this document is now past its review date, it needs to go through the review and approval process. Inside the document management area, we can also do things like see version history. So by clicking on the ellipsis on the right hand side and clicking version history, we can see all the changes and everything which has happened. So who made the changes, when they made the changes, if there was any comments, and we can see exactly all of these in a very auditable kind of way. So this makes it perfect for people who are following an ISO methodology. So if you've got an ISO accreditation such as 9001 or something like that, quite often the auditors like things like SharePoint because all the changes are easily traceable, and you get a nice audit trail in here of what's happened and when. We can also say, for example, if we realise that a particular document has gone a little bit pear-shaped and something about it maybe is missing, or we need basically an older version of the document back, we can actually come back through our version history and we can restore a document back from a previous time. So if we knew that that document was perfectly fine 2 weeks ago, we could come in and we could restore it back to that specific date and time. Document areas can also be controlled with permissions, so we could lock down document areas. So, for example, if there were specific documents which were quite sensitive, maybe they're documents for the board members or things like that, we could lock down the permissions of our document libraries so that only certain users would be able to see them. So the next thing that I wanted to discuss was PowerApps. Now, we have actually got a number of Power Apps that Valto's created. We've got building blocks of different applications. The idea behind a Power App is essentially it's creating a user interface which replaces the need for paper forms. So, for example, this example visitor registration app is something where imagine you have a visitor that comes into your reception. Usually, you would have a big book, a paper-based book on your desk, and they can sign in with a pen and paper to write down who they are, what their registration number is of their car, contact details, who they're there to see, and things like that. However, with this digital transformation ideas, we're looking at ways that we can replace things like paper forms, such as the visitor registration logbook, such as accident reporting, such as expense claims, all these different things which traditionally have involved having paper forms, which are written into, often then scanned, emailed to people, things like that. We can digitalize all of that and replace the need. Also streamlining as well. So, for example, this app could be displayed on a tablet, and then it's then attached to a desk. So it might even necessarily replace the need for having a receptionist to then, once someone's written their name in a book, to then call whoever they're visiting to say that they have a visiting reception. So all these things can be streamlined with Power Apps. So Power Apps not only creates the user interface, it also provides an application which you can run on either your mobile phone, tablets, on both Android and iOS. And those apps can be actually on the desktop or the home page of your tablet. And then when you double click and open them, it already knows from when you've set up the app, you've signed in with your Office 365 credentials, and it knows who you are and what sort of level of access you have. This particular application would probably permanently be open on a tablet that is on the reception desk. So I'm now going to demonstrate how this app works. So imagine this is displayed on a tablet. Somebody comes into reception, they can click on check-in, and then it's going to ask them for their name. And now it's also displaying my pictures because it's going to take a picture. So I would say I'm logging in as Dougie Wood. In fact, I'm going to put blogs, and I'm going to show you why in a minute. So it's a little bit more obvious. I put in my phone number, a fake phone number, obviously. Company, so where I'm coming from, and who I'm here to visit. So this person field is actually picking up from the Office 365 user list. So as long as I have my employees all inside of Office 365, I can start looking for multiple people inside of here and say I'm visiting, say maybe Hugh, but I'm actually going to select myself for this as an example. So this is who I'm visiting. I can then click on the picture in the middle, which will take a picture of myself. So that just for registration purposes and security, I can take that picture. Other things which we've added to this particular form is things like on-site policies. So maybe you have a policy that is a health and safety policy that all visitors to your office must read before they can sign in. We can display that on here, make sure that they've scrolled through it and clicked that they accepted that policy. And that we can also configure many different fields inside of here to capture any data that you need to. So, for example, car registration number, you might want to put that in there, or anything else we can put fields in there. So when we click on submit, that's then added us into the signed in list. So what will automatically happen from this is that whoever you have said that you're visiting will automatically get an email to say that the visitor has arrived in reception. which I believe has just come through now. So it's saying, hi, Doug Wood, and then this is why I put Joe Bloggs. So Joe Bloggs was the person who was signing in, is waiting in reception for you. This email can also be completely configured. It was being generated by an automation through Flow, which I'll show you once we come through to the Flow section. And yeah, we can completely configure this. So this email could have all the information that's gathered inside the form. It can have other things in there and be templated exactly how you want it to be templated. Something else which I've also put in there was a approval step. Now, you might not necessarily need to have an approval for someone who's signing in, but we'll come through when we're looking at the flow and look at how that review step works. So that the review might be more for other processes, and we'll take a look at that when we come through to the flow section. So other Power Apps that we've created in the past have included things like expenses forms, sales tools for creating quotes. So rather than having somebody, a sales manager, go on site with a bunch of paper forms that they have to then fill out and then go back to their office, create a quote and work out work out the sort of costs and quotes and things like that. They can do it all automated from a Power App. They can fill out a form, select different products that the customer may be interested in, and generate that quote, that proposal there and then. Click a button, it sends it a copy both to the salesperson as well as the customer, and it just speeds up that overall process really quickly. We've created things like site inspection forms. So, for example, people who are in engineering or construction, quite often they need to have site inspections periodically through their development process. So if there was any issues or faults that they've been found during their site inspection, they could take a photo through their app and then upload that into something like SharePoint, which automates a response to somebody to look at that fault and start building up a task tracker to make sure that all these faults are actually completed in a timely manner. But there's a whole range of different applications that you could potentially build with Power Apps, and the difference between building a Power App and a traditional kind of app, which has been used with previously, is Power Apps are a lot quicker to build. There's a lot more resources available there. So to build one of these sort of apps, that you're talking more like weeks rather than months to build something which is as powerful as what we've been talking about and demonstrating. So the next bit I was just going to talk about was Flow. And Flow is responsible for sending that automated email out the back of this visitor registration app. Flow is a, let me just find the, so Flow provides automation inside Office 365, whether it be notifications when certain things are happening, or possibly even speeding up repetitive tasks. So things like if you've got a shared mailbox and you're receiving maybe CVs, for example, into the shared mailbox. If you have somebody who has an admin job where they're forever going into the shared mailbox, getting the attachments off the CV attachments from these emails and uploading them into SharePoint or OneDrive or filing them in certain places, we can use things like Flow to automate that process. So as soon as the email comes in, it then takes it and files it in the right place, depending on sort of conditions and a formula you've already preset up. So this is if you go through Office 365 and click on Flow, this is the first page you're going to land on. You can click into My Flows, and this is the area where you'll see all the different flows you previously created. So if you create a flow, this is where it will appear. If you've shared the flow or had a flow shared with you by a team member, it will appear in team flows. And if you're part of an enterprise package, you'll also be able to have the business process flows. So there are a couple of other aspects to this. We've got templates. So within Flow, there are thousands of different templates that you can start off with. So if you're not particularly coming from a programming background and you're new to sort of how you can create automation and things like that, it's quite a good idea to take a look at all the different templates which are available inside of Flow. And potentially you could build your own flow based from a template that you found within this list. You can search by product, so it connects to third-party things like Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, all these different applications third-party. It's not just the products inside Office 365 that it can connect to, but it can connect to other products such as Planner, To-Do, Teams, SharePoint, OneDrive, all of these different products inside Office 365, it can connect to them, as well as many more, hundreds more third-party applications. So yeah, have a look through this, have a look at some of the different templates. Say, for example, there's one here. It sounds a little bit pointless, but it can plug into other things that you're doing. So just because it may not sound particularly useful from here, once you've configured it, you can make it work for how you want it to. So, for example, getting today's weather forecast for my current location, that might be useful. You might slightly tweak that. So, for example, if you've got quite a lot of workforce which work out in the open, it might be useful to know what the weather is, and you could potentially give them an email first thing in the morning, 7 o'clock in the morning, they receive an email saying what the weather forecast is going to be in that area that they're going to be working on that day. So do they need to necessarily bring different type of workwear or clothing, depending on the different types of weather there's going to be? So it's all of these things that you could potentially streamline, help, and provide additional information to your employees through using automation in Flow. So looking at the this is the flow that we created for the visitor registration app. So this is actually, I was saying before about approvals. Now, this might be more attached to something like a document approval process or an expenses claims approval process or something along the lines of that. But essentially, it's all going to be the same type of approval process. And this is the Flow Designer interface. So we can see it's all made up of sort of blocks. And if you're used to using things like Visio or any kind of flow chart software, it's very similar, that it's going to follow, well, a flow. That's what it's called. It flows from top to bottom. So there are three main features of Flow. So three main things you've got to consider when you're creating a flow. The first is, what is the trigger? So there are hundreds, thousands of different types of triggers, which is going to start your flow. So that's usually something that says when this happens or if this happens. So when a new item is created, so what was happening with our Power App is we have our Power App is submitting its data into a SharePoint list, and this is the sort of list, the database, which is holding all of the data from our visitor registration app in the background. So if we did ever want to go into the database and export this directly into Excel, we could do reporting on it, and we could look for things like how many visitors we've had within a specific month, and things like that. But essentially what our flow is doing is it's saying when a new item is created or when a new visitor logs in, basically, we're going to start this process. So that's our trigger. So our flow will be triggered by that. We're then going to have an action. So the action is to start an approval. So the second thing we've got to consider is our conditions. So the three things is trigger, condition, and action. And you can have actions without conditions, but you wouldn't necessarily have a condition without an action. The condition is if this equals that, or when this happens, do this. And the do this part of it is the action. So the action is physically going and doing something. It's automating something. It's going to do something for you that you may normally do manually. So in this case, we're using an action to start an approval. And then we're using a condition. So once that approval has gone through, what essentially happens is it will pause until we get a response. So it's either going to be approved or rejected. And the email that comes through will look like this. We can configure this. This is just a dummy sort of data, but we can see this is the item that it's related to. It may be a document that's related to. It might not necessarily need a link. We can provide details and description about what it is that we're approving. And then we can provide an approval by clicking approve. And if we wanted to give a reason, same for rejected, if we wanted to give a reason why we're approving or rejecting, we can type that into this box. And then click submit. And then that's then completed our approval and submitted our approval back into Flow. So once our approval has been submitted, it will then move down to this next step, which is the condition. From here, we're going to say, what is the response? So the response is only going to contain either approved or rejected. And we can then set our condition. So there's multiple conditions we can say. It either contains something, it does not contain something, it's equal to something, it's not equal to something, and so on. In this case, we're saying it's equal to approved. So if it's equal to approved, we're going to go into this if yes column. If it was equal to rejected, or for whatever reason there was another type of response, and it's not equal to approved, it's then going to go into the no column, and it's going to use this action. But because we've gone with yes, we're using send an email action. And we're saying we're going to send it to whoever it's created by, but this might be whoever. We can type out somebody into here, or we can dynamically find somebody. The subject, so we're building up now what the subject of the email will be, as well as the body of the email. And we're saying your request for, and that's the title of the item, has been approved, the approver name, and the comments that we provided as well. So now we're going to receive an email because we've just approved, which is going to contain that. So going back into our emails now, we can see we've got your request has been approved by, and then it knows that it was me that approved it. Comments, if any, and that's the comment that I placed. I'm approving for X reason. Okay, so that summarizes what we were talking about with the modern SharePoint solutions. What I wanted to take a look at next was Teams and how that fits into the overall solution. So Teams is a app that we can Teams is an application that we can install on our computer, or we can get access to it directly from our Office 365 web browser. Teams is used for the actual department collaboration. So, for example, when we were looking at our demo finance department before, this is the area that we can actually work on documents together with our team. So we can do things like post directly into the team. So think of Teams as almost like a chat room for your department. So we could post directly into here if we wanted to. But what will happen is nobody will actually get notified by that post. That post is just going to be there for next time anyone from our team comes in. We can post directly to people. So using the @ symbol, we can select or start typing out who we would like to message directly. And then that user will actually get notified that they have a message within the team. And we can also notify the entire team by using the @ symbol and typing out whatever the name of the team is. And they will get notified, the whole team will get notified. And we can see a symbol here on the right-hand side that the whole team has been notified. We can also see that people can start commenting, so they can respond to our messages, as well as liking our posts, which is a great way of sort of being notified when someone's read your message as well, is when the people start liking and commenting back on it things. We can also attach documents, so we can collaborate directly on documents at the same time. So we can browse teams and channels. So what we're doing at the moment is we're looking at files which sit inside of the team. So we can upload files directly into this team. Which is our team document storage area. And then we can then attach them, share a link to them inside a post. And we can open those documents and collaborate on them at the same time. So we have what refers to as co-authoring, which means that multiple people can edit the documents at the same time, and we can see who's editing that document. So by clicking through, I can choose to edit either in Teams, I can edit in Excel directly, or I can click on Edit in Excel Online, which will then open in a browser. So I can work on my document at the same time. I can also see who else is editing the document from the top right corner. So I can see that Hugh Valentine is also editing this document at the same time. And if he was posting anywhere inside of this Excel spreadsheet, I would also see the square, the cell that he's inside of, change color, and I would be able to see what he was typing in live time. So I can see that he's typing in here now, and it's appearing at the same time. So just going back into my team now. So there are other things which you can do with Teams, such as creating wiki articles and building up sort of pages within inside of your own team. You can also add tabs into your team. So Microsoft are really pushing for this Teams first approach, where eventually Teams will be kind of like the one-stop shop for all of your applications and your day-to-day working. You'll go in there for communication, which will sort of reduce the amount of email traffic internally, as well as document management. So you'll be able to go in there and work with documents, editing, uploading documents which are relevant to your team, as well as additional tabs that you can add across the top, which do things like linking to popular Excel documents, for example. Maybe actually embed your own intranet, your SharePoint intranet into your team, or third-party websites, and there's a whole range of other third-party applications which plug directly into your team to make your day-to-day working even easier. We can message our staff directly as well, so there's a one-on-one chats, and it's not just a team chat room available. We can also use things like GIFs and emojis, sticky notes and things like that, as well as what we're using the functionality at the moment, which is for meetings. So we can schedule to have calls, screen sharing, video conferencing, and also presenting webinars, which we can record, such as what we're doing at the moment, and then we can save that and upload it into places like SharePoint or Office 365 Stream, which is kind of like the YouTube of Office 365. So I'm just approaching my time limit now. So I'm going to be flicking across to see if there's any questions at the moment. So one of the questions is, do we have pre-built designs we can pick up from? Do you have pre-built designs we can pick from, like the homepage? Yes, we do have pre-built designs. So we do have a range of designs which can be tweaked and tailored, and they just have your own corporate brand colours applied over the top of them. Another question there is, what is the minimum licensing required for modern SharePoint, PowerApps and Flow? So Business Essentials is probably the minimum requirement, which will get you all of those functionalities, and that was the cheapest license on there. Another question is Teams available on all license plans? So Teams is available, but the calling section of it is an additional license plan. And what applications have we built before inside PowerApps? So things like expense forms, sales tools, site inspection. We've also done things like task scanners. So, for example, we worked with a company which required certain tasks to be scanned at certain times. So, for example, their security guard that does a patrol around the building, they needed some like an app, which we built a Power App, which when they walk around certain parts of the building, they can scan tasks on the wall, and that then automatically clocks their sort of location where they are to prove that they were in the certain parts of the building at certain times. We also expanded that for things like their cleaners. So rather than having a piece of paper on the back of the toilet's doors which says they fill out what time they've cleaned it, all they need to do is scan it, and the app knows who they are and documents a time when they scanned that. So for things like that, it then provides a really good audit trail of who did what and when, and if anything was missed, because it's an automatic system, we also put things in place where if something was missed, so like a certain task was missed, that they were supposed to just clean the toilets every 4 hours or something like that, then the manager would get an email to say that it's been missed, and they could follow up on it and things like that. So the final question there, can we arrange a meeting for further help on this? Yes, definitely. If you have any questions or would like to see anything further, I know that this session's been slightly shorter. So if there's anything further that you would like to sort of cover off, or if any of the applications that have been mentioned or demonstrated as part of this process are of interest to you, then yeah, we're happy to set up a free demonstration for you to talk about that. So that's all the time that we've got. So I'd like just to say thank you for everybody for joining, and we'll be sending out this recording shortly to everybody who has joined, as well as it will be available from our website and will be available on our YouTube channel shortly. Okay, cheers, thank you guys.